Adventures of Sonic, Episode 49, Hedgehog of the Hound Table. Oh good, it starts out with the time machine from last episode spinning and sending the villains away in a past time period. Robotnik crosses out the invisibility Chaos Emerald on his list, and goes to the secret lair of Merlix the Magician. Merlix, who's a fox like Merlin Prower except with chipmunk cheeks, drinks a potion he made. Robotnik confronts him, and he tells his robots to turn Merlix back to normal. Grounder picks up his star rod, and he gets turned into a wedding cake ornament. Robotnik masters the star rod, returning Merlix to normal, and he asks for the Chaos Emerald of Invincibility. He threatens the wizard and gets the emerald easily. It was actually entertaining to see Eggman brag that now he's invincible, and can never be harmed.
Now I'm invincible! I can never be harmed!
Robotnik tells his robot to laser him, and oddly enough, while we see him become a skeleton briefly in an impressively dark moment, somehow he's only singed afterwards instead of reality ensuing and his robot killing him from that. I mean, it's not like it would matter anyways, because couldn't he just time travel and... Oh look! Past version of him! So it's fine! He's not dead. Like, why didn't the robot stop earlier since he obviously wasn't invincible? Merlix tells Robotnik that he needs to become king to complete the spell. I guess he told him that when he didn't have to because he thought Robotnik would kill him from a rage otherwise. After Sonic flirts with the girl, Professor K9 warns Sonic about Robotnik's evilness. Sonic shows himself to be racist against octopus Mobians as he takes off from her just because she has squid arms, even though he should be used to those people living on Mobius. Why would he care? He goes through time and space running around and goes to a castle. A woman says her father's in danger from an attack, and because Camelot tales clichéness, the king is of course King Arthur. I'd expect this to contribute to the plot, rather than just being a fancy name. And Tails meets the king himself way too easily for it to be realistic. Like they didn't save the entire castle or kingdom from a giant robot or anything. Why are these unknown commoners allowed in the king's court? The princess and king just now found out that Sonic's the knight destined to save them from a stable time loop. So that's not it. That's not why they're allowed in here. Scratch and Grounder dressed in knight suits defeat the various knights, with Scratch being an impressive threat with his laser since we see the knight's skeleton. Sonic sees Robotnik on the ladder from outside the window and finally breaks Robotnik's ladder, sending him into the ground. Sonic is slowly followed by Scratch instead of Scratch immediately attacking him, and this idiocy lets Tails send steaming oatmeal at Scratch. Why was the oatmeal even on the roof of the castle? I mean, we don't see where he got it. Scratch is swallowed by the moat crocodile, and Grounder plans to use a catapult, but he doesn't know where he put his rocks. Sonic ties Robotnik into a ball somehow. He's a human, remember? And Robotnik for some reason doesn't tell Grounder that it's him in time. Oh, now he talks to Grounder. But Grounder somehow doesn't know it's Robotnik, and he fires him into the bullseye anyways. That was forced. Merlix shows up and is ordered around by Robotnik. He turns Sonic's feet into solid rock. Why didn't he just do that to Robotnik? Completely petrify him. Why be afraid of him with that kind of power? He's clearly a bad guy. Why help him if you don't have to? This is so forced. It would have made sense if Robotnik had roboticized Merlix, to not give him any sort of free will. Robotnik gets over the wall easily and takes the emerald, getting muscles and a crown. He decrees Sonic and Tails to be in the castle dungeon. You know, I don't think he really counts as the king. I mean, he wasn't born into it, and King Arthur technically wasn't born into it either in the myths. Like, wasn't he just a peasant and he became a king? Like, I guess he became a king in the same sense that Arthur did, even though he didn't morally earn it. And the crown thinks that's good enough for the spell. Sonic drops his rock feet onto Tails by accident, not that it has any consequences past the scene. The princess tells Sonic to find Murlocs to break the spell, gives him chili dogs. Okay, Tails lampshading that chili dogs exist in the Middle Ages doesn't make it okay. I'm sick of Sonic eating nothing but these. But it turns out that she hid a tool for Sonic's escape in the food.
I love being invincible!
Robotnik entertains me again, saying he loves being invincible, dropping an anvil on himself. And he says he can't wait to see the look on Sonic's face when he tells him he's gone. I love that line too, and how Scratch commented on it like a Captain Obvious.
I can't wait to see the look on that Hedgehog's face when I tell him he's gone!
I don't think you have to tell him he's gone, your slowness. I think he knows!
I guess Sonic is too heavy for Tails to just pick up and carry. Scratch finds Sonic and the robots threaten him. Sonic steps on their toes and kicks Grounder away with his feet, and then forces Scratch's oil out to make an oil trail, which is cringe-worthy because that's basically Scratch's blood. So Sonic slides along Scratch's blood to get to Murlocs, who for no reason has turned himself into bad cheese to pad over the episode. How did he do that by accident? He says he hasn't been able to make that spell work for 40 years and wants to give up. He turns Sonic's feet back to normal because he owes him, and there's a little more padding before finally they turn back to normal. Someone hits Robotnik's door, and I can feel the paper-thin disguise coming from here. Robotnik gets a note challenging him to a joust with Sonic. I like how offended he is at Sonic's title of Holy Hedgehog.
Holy Hedgehog?
Robotnik goes to the joust, keeping the emerald in his helmet, and Sonic somehow shows up on a fake-looking horse that should be able to move, but does anyways. He gets knocked off the horse and spin dashes at Robotnik to damage his lance. I mean, he challenged him to a joust and he lost the horse. He should already be disqualified, but the joust was just an excuse to meet up with him. Robotnik reveals his lance to be a laser shooter, but instead of it being a dark reality ensues moment that kills Sonic and forces Tails to go back in time to get a different version of him, instead Sonic is magically unharmed when not all of him was covered by Knight's armor. Sonic insultingly easily makes a tree grow from the ground to stop Robotnik and take his emerald. I guess he had a magic material of Murlocs? But how did Robotnik not notice that he lost his emerald? Sonic destroys his armor, and Tails turns into Titan Tails with the emerald despite not being the king and beats up the robots. He looks way better in the show than in the comic with that form. Though he's not entirely good, but better than in the comic. Robotnik uses magic to give himself super strong knights. Sonic spin dashes at them to turn them back into regular civilians, because he can do that apparently, and sends Robotnik into the water. Did Sonic use a magical material of Murlocs to turn them back to normal? Huh? Sonic sends Robotnik and the bad guys away on their time machine, as I wonder why it couldn't have just been Murlocs who returned them to normal. And Tails says that they're in for a surprise. If Sonic was smart, he would have sent them to a certain death trap. They get sent to the Roman Colosseum to be threatened by lions. Did Sonic intentionally try to kill them? How could they have survived that? I guess these robots were pretty good at defending Robotnik after all, since they survived this. I mean, if Sonic wanted to be really smart about it, he would have made sure they would fall off the time machine. They wouldn't be able to get back to it. Just, like, send them to a volcano. And the Sonic Says message lectures the audience about safe swimming, like not swimming all alone, which has nothing to do with the episode. It's like they designed 2 Sonic Says sections for the previous episode and couldn't use them both. This was another fantastic episode. I'm impressed that they actually continued with the previous episode's plot for a change. It had Robotnik go after the Invincibility Emerald, which will only work for someone with King Arthur's crown on his head, and yet Tails used it just fine. So Robotnik took over the castle with his robots to become that way, complete with being muscular. However, Sonic, after a very fortunate subversion of the paper-thin disguise, defeats Robotnik just fine. So I assume he did those magical feats with materials from Murlocs? Who's the cowardly wizard who did what Robotnik said instead of just turning him into a stone statue? Yeah, Merlin Prower was the better character. He wouldn't have done this. He could have been roboticized and his behavior would have made sense, but then he wouldn't have been able to. But Sonic and Tails could have just robbed him of his magical materials just fine. He didn't need to not be a robot. The story arc is the first time the show bothered to have one, really late into it. So there's no excuse for only using the roboticization concept once, and it feels like it could be the finale, but it won't be! So continuing after the arc's done will seem anticlimactic since I guess they won't have as much continuity as this ever again. They blew their load with the epicness way too early, even though the show would have benefited from it. This should have been the finale, but the actual finale is pretty disappointing.